Watch it as a kid. It's called Kids Say the Darndest Thing. And they do. Sometimes they say the most ridiculous thing in the world. Have you seen the video of the guy? Well, it's a woman. It's a mom with a little guy. And he wants a biddy-biddy-bo. And it takes her probably a week to figure out what the heck that is. That's what I'm going to talk about in this episode of Leading Leaders. Stay tuned.
Story Power Method to captivate your audience, improve workplace culture, and 10x your fundraising.
Scan the QR code to book your first coaching call or visit storypowercoach.com.
Real quick reminder, Narrative Warrior Kingdom cohort. We're in our first go around right now. 18 weeks from now, we will have our first graduates. Narrative warriors ready to combat the lies that are going on in our culture and our society and have a story that answers the challenge. Are you in?
Subscribe now for access to our extensive media library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom. Begin your personal growth plan at storypoweracademy.com for leadership development and communication skills training.
I'm Jay Lauren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast. If you haven't seen the little Facebook meme, it's actually pretty cute. She asks him in the car, she asks him in the kitchen, she asks him in the living room, she asks him on a road trip. She asks him several times, what is it you want for lunch? And he says, and it's really cute because you have no idea what he's saying. And she asks him, is it a hot dog? Is it a pizza? What is it that you want for lunch? And finally they go through the Taco Bell drive-thru. And she orders a taco and a burrito. And he said, yes. Kids Say the Darndest Thing is a really cute show. For a long time, they would ask kids questions that really, honestly, the odds that they knew the answer, pretty close to zero. I mean, most of these kids were elementary age kids, some of them preschool age kids, just old enough to talk. But if you asked them complicated questions, a lot of them came up with what seemed like intelligent answers until you really dug into the answers. They also would oftentimes out their parents in ways that their parents were like, I can't believe they said that, or I can't believe they saw that. Let me remind you something John Maxwell says on a regular basis. Yes, he wrote a book called Children Are Wet Cement. That's probably not the one that you want. But what you do want to remember is the law of the picture. The law of the picture says people do what people see. People do what people see. Now, I want to add into the mix that you have people seeing and doing in the living room, in the front yard, in the backyard, on the block, at school. Kids are seeing other people do, and so they do what they see. People do what people see. There's a lot of the picture. They see it in the community, and then they see it on social media. And when you can manipulate the behavior of someone by doing something that you know they're going to mimic or mock. I remember people who didn't have kids being around my kids when they were young. And they would sometimes say things just to see if they could get the kid to repeat it. Vile things, inappropriate things, wildly inappropriate things, profane or disgusting, or just try to get them to say a word that they know they can't pronounce well so that they can laugh at them, so that they can mock them because they think it's funny. It's cute when a child is trying to stretch beyond their limits and they can't quite get there, but a good parent will encourage them to improve, not mock them when they fail. Let me say that again. A good parent will encourage them to improve, not mock them when they fail. If you're a young parent, write that down, start it now. Why? Let me just give you an example that's been in the news. 3 teenagers in a couple of different states have been approached, young men between 15 and 17, all 3 of them. They were approached by what they believed to be a fascinating young lady who was cute, who had interest in them, and sent pictures of herself, and of course asked them to do the same, only to find out that the young lady was AI created, and that there was someone nefarious on the backside. There was never a young lady that feigned interest in them or was truly interested in them, and never a young lady who was interested in them who was willing to expose herself to them. All of that was the snare. We talked about snares in the last episode. All of that was the snare, the bait, and the trap all kind of rolled in one. And when the trap closed, it looked like this. Now that I've sent you pictures of myself, send me pictures of you. And they did. They all fell for it. And once the pictures were sent, the girl vanished like a vapor, like the trap door. It's closed. Now you're in the hole. And what was the hole? Now that the bad guys, the nefarious ones, had pictures of these teenage boys, they said, either you send us large amounts of money or we send this to your school and your parents. Either you send us large amounts of money or we send these photos of you that you thought you were sending in confidence to an attractive young girl who had already sent you pictures of her, so it's the same trap. No, she's made up. You're real. So what do you think was the end result? 3 young men, teenage boys, 15 to 17 years old, so steeped in the shame of what they had done that they felt like it was better to exit stage left than to face their friends and their family. All 3 of them. All 3 of them took their lives. As parents, our job is to encourage them to do better, not mock them when they fail. And if you don't start that when they're toddlers, when they're learning to talk, when they're learning to walk, when they're making mistakes on a regular basis, because that's how they learn, then when they're teenagers, they will not trust you. When they're young adults, they will not trust you to step in behind them and do what you can to help them. They will believe that you are not on their side. You've got to start that early. And let me tell you how that starts. It starts with stories. With the stories that you tell about yourself. With the stories that you tell about them, about their parents and their grandparents, about their siblings, about their neighbors. The stories that you tell to them about them will either build them up or tear them down. It will either set them up for a future that you believe in them. I listened to a story just last night where someone said, I knew early on when I was a kid that I was made for greatness, but I was rejected by so many people from the time I was in elementary school until I was a young adult that it destroyed me. I didn't believe in me anymore. It's all about building up that self-confidence in a true way, not fake confidence, not some pie in the sky, everybody wins, rainbows and unicorns for everyone kind of. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about giving them a healthy, realistic, honest self-worth that stretches them just a little bit. Dale Carnegie said it over 100 years ago. He said, give a man a fine reputation to live up to, and he will. That's pretty powerful stuff. If you've watched this podcast for any period of time, you've heard me talk about my boys. They're now 28 and almost 30 years old. And in their lives today, if those 2 boys are together, which they were this last summer, when they're together and they start acting like idiots because they're brothers and that's what they do, they have the same one-word correction from me that they've had since they were probably 10. Gentlemen, see, it's both a rebuke and a reminder. You're not acting like what gentlemen would act like. And it's a double-edged sword, right? What you're doing right now isn't that. Do better. But it doesn't require the whole lecture, because we had that lecture so many times. From the time they were 8, 10, 12 years old, gentlemen, was enough for them to understand, I don't like the way you're behaving right now. And if you continue, I'm going to do something about it as your father. As grown men now, sometimes all they need is that reminder that everybody else is watching. People are paying attention. They still make mistakes. For heaven's sake, I'm a grown man. I'm closer to a senior citizen than I am a young buck. And I still make mistakes, and I still need correction, and I still need people to speak into my life and go, I wouldn't do it like that. The way you just did that, you should fix that. And if you think you've outgrown that, you're too smart for that, you're too educated for that, you're too good for that, you're a fool. You're a bigger fool than you know if you think you need no correction at any point. But if you're willing to admit that you need correction, you need some help, you need some guidance, you need some coaching, a mentor, somebody to be accountable to, you're on the right track. And remember that if you need that, so do those young people that you raised. And I don't care if they're 40 or 50 years old. They still need someone who cares enough about them to go, hold on, hold on, hold on. That's not the best idea. I wouldn't do that. I was sharing just last night on one of our coaching calls. I was driving through town to go to a meeting, and the little radiator light came on my car. Well, I know what that means. Those idiot lights aren't warnings anymore of something to come. They're like, you better do something about this right now. So we pulled over, and I got some antifreeze to put it in there. And the hood of my car was probably 120 degrees because it's black, and it was already 114 on the dash in the car. So it was hot. I didn't want to touch the hood, but I had to hold it up. And I've always taught my boys, if you have to open that radiator cap while the engine is hot, leave the engine running. That minimizes some pressure. And open it with the hood down. So if anything gets burned by splashing water, it's just your hand, not your face. And it doesn't become lethal because you can breathe that stuff in. And if it's vaporized, you can have a toxic level of antifreeze in a heartbeat. So I'm holding the hood down and I'm trying to open the hood. And the thing that's going through my mind is, man, I'd love to get my wife to come out here with a rag and hold that hood, but I'm not going to put her in the danger of that antifreeze either. And then I think back to about 2 years ago when my oldest son came home, and from the hairline all the way down to his shirt collar looked like second, maybe even third degree burns. I said, buddy, what happened? He said, I had the hood up when I opened the radiator and it exploded in my face. I'm like, well, I'm glad you're still alive, and I'm glad you still have your eyesight. And fortunately, all of the skin grew back perfectly normal. There's no shading, there's no scar tissue or anything like that. But see, that's a grown man taking care of his own responsibilities and still making mistakes. And it happens to all of us. All of us. When you think you've outgrown making mistakes, you're wrong. Today's message is really about that multi-generational communication. How do we build a business? How do we build an enterprise? How do we do the work outside the home that we've got to have that moxie? We've got to be good enough to run a business. We've got to be worth the investment of someone putting money into our company or our salary. And at the same time, we've got to do all that without abandoning our bedrock work at home. We've got to be able to speak in the marketplace and speak in the living room. We've got to be able to tell the truth in both arenas. And that demands some integrity. And think back to how many times you've heard somebody talk about little white lies. The biggest problem with a liar is they can't keep all their lies straight, and eventually they catch up with them. A little white lie here and a little white lie over there, and eventually all those little white lies catch up. But the story that you tell, if the story that you tell to your boss, to your shareholders, your stakeholders, to your business partners, to your consumers, if the story that you're telling about your business, your product, your services, the promises that you offer to your consumer or your shareholders, and how you plan to deliver that, if those stories are in integrity, if those stories are authentic, if you can back up every promise with a delivery, you're going to go far in this life. But how often do we find ourselves working really hard on that in the marketplace and not in the living room? See, the stories that we tell our kids, they should be real and solid and truthful and authentic as well, even when they don't put us in the best light. Sometimes you've got to tell the truth and it's a little bit embarrassing to yourself. Sometimes you have to apologize. Sometimes you've got to be willing to say, I'm sorry, I was wrong. I misjudged. I made a mistake. I made a bad decision. And then do all you can to correct it. But I'll tell you, after raising 4 kids and having 13 grandkids, an apology goes a long way. It still isn't easy. Sometimes my apologies feel like the Fonzie. Just trying to get my tongue to say it is hard. Well, it's a pride issue. You got to work on that. But the kids, whether they're 3 or 13 or 23 or 33, they're not going to forget that. They're not going to forget that you had the integrity to admit that you were wrong and then do everything you can to correct it. See, we're willing to do that in front of the board. We're willing to do that in front of the consumer. That's why we have money-back guarantees, et cetera, right? Do our kids get a money-back guarantee? Do our kids leave home going off to school and college and know that if mom or dad messed up, at least they're going to do all they can to make it right? Or do our kids just get the leftovers? See, one of the biggest challenges we have in our society today is that our kids have lost trust in their parents. Now, in my opinion, based on the research that I've done, the videos that I watched, the books that I've read, the encounters that I've had, there's some nefarious work afoot in social media, in public education, in government policy that is driving a wedge between parents and children like you wouldn't believe. Sex orientation surgeries are being done in some school systems, in some states, and it's prohibited by the policy of the district, some places prohibited by the policy of the state, for the school to inform the parents that their child is going through a transition, emotionally, mentally, or even physically, even to the point of getting medical treatments while on school time, and they're prohibited from telling the parents. If you're not having conversations with your kids around the dinner table while you're playing games, while you're at the soccer game or the baseball game or on your way back and forth, if their faces are buried in their digital devices or they're hiding things from you under the covers, chances are somebody's stepping into that conversation in a way that you wouldn't approve if you were paying attention. If you knew what they were saying, you wouldn't like what they were saying. If you heard them say it, you would stop them, you would correct them, you would change the subject. And it's happening at every level. It's happening all over the world. It's not just Western culture, it's all cultures. And as much as I disagree with many things in the Quran, the one thing that I have to agree is that the Muslims that I know, the ones who are friends of mine, they protect their family for all they're worth. Now, I don't personally agree with every doctrine and the way that they treat each other within family, but they are family oriented. And the way they view family, you don't mess with their family. That's not what we see in Western culture today. They have a better structure for protecting their family and what they believe than a lot of Western ideologies. We actually have people running for office right now. They want to be some of the most influential policymakers, money movers, life changers in your world. They will walk right into your living room and tell you how to live your life, where your money should go, where your money can go. If this whole digital currency thing is pulled off, they'll be able to look at somebody like me and go, I don't like the way you think. I don't like the way you talk. No Brahms for you. In fact, your whole bank account doesn't work. If you think I'm kidding, just back up for a minute and do some research on who the Canadian truckers were. What were they fighting for? How did the government fight back? What were they fighting for? How did the government fight back? Just ask those two things about the Canadian truckers, and it will astonish you, because you can take trucker out of there and put in farmer, beautician, restaurant owner, gas station owner. If you run afoul of a certain group of people, they have a way of reaching out and touching someone in a way that you do not want to be touched. And many of those people have that power because they were elected to office by lying through their teeth about what they believe and what they stand for. Some of them that are running for office right now, if you had told me 10 years ago this person would even be able to get their name on a ballot, I would have been astonished. But Now they're not just running for office, they actually have a chance to win. And if you just read through some of the things that they say, I'm not talking about the stuff that they're hiding in the closet waiting to get the power, then they'll pull out the big guns. I'm talking about the stuff they say on the national campaign trail. Video memes that are being played all over social media and regular media, and you're going, wait, hold on, you actually believe that? Really? That's crazy. I mean, there's no basis in truth for that. Where do you even come up with that? But let me tell you something. Those ideas, as maniacal and lunatic as I believe they are, and I'd love to debate them. I think we'd have a lot of fun having that conversation. But those ideas are using these devices to get in your living room. They're using these devices to get into your classroom. They're using these devices to get right into the hearts and mind of your children. And one of their primary objectives is to drive a wedge between you and your children. The only way you're going to fight that is with better stories with your children. Yes, this is a self-serving message. Story Power Academy is positioned and purposed to help you understand how the stories you tell around the dining room table and around the conference table will change your life and the life of the people that you influence. Right behind the Story Power method is Attitude Hack. Attitude Hack teaches you how to take those stories you've crafted and move them into designing and developing attitudes, which then become the brand in your organization and your culture, in your home and in your enterprise. And then behind that, lead the narrative, which then zooms out and says, now you understand how these stories are crafted, how they're utilized for brand and culture around the dining room table and the conference table. Now let's back up and look at the narratives that are trying to interfere in your business, your relationships, your faith, your family, and your freedom. And when we can identify some of those narratives, some of those messages that are coming from outside, it makes it a whole lot more strategic for us to use the stories, the brand, and the culture that we've developed, that tool, to protect our family and our future. I don't think for a moment that if we just wait silently, this will pass. No. There's 100 years plus of history that people who have a different worldview have constantly driven the narrative through the newspaper, through social media, through television, through movies, through song lyrics, through the books that are in the library. They have an agenda, and part of that agenda is to separate parents from children. That's just one part. It's also about control. It's about helping you make decisions or telling you what decisions you can make. If you don't equip yourself to identify those stories and know how to combat them, know how to tell the truth in an effective way, know how to talk about the past in a way that people can learn from it. If you don't learn that skill set, you will become a victim of it. You'll either lead the narrative or you'll be led by it. Those are really the only two choices. Now, if you find yourself in a place running a business, trying to lead your children, and you're not exactly sure what you should do, I'm going to give you 3 really simple tactics. Number 1, I want you to reclaim the dinner table. I want you to get back to the place where the conversation around the dinner table, and back up for a moment. If you don't have a dinner table in your home, create one. It's sometimes a little bit uncomfortable. One of my daughters very much is like our house. People kind of come and go. They eat whenever they want to. If there's a meal, that's great. And you know, we just get fed. And you know, sometimes we'll put the TV trays down and gather around and watch the football game while we're eating. That's kind of the pace. My other daughter, on the other hand, is a little more regimented than that. She has 3 boys. She puts together the dinner table. They put the food on the table. They sit down together. They have a conversation over dinner. You wait until you're excused to get up and leave. You don't start eating until everybody's at the table. There's a little bit of regimen around that. And that conversation around the dinner table, when you've got a 13-year-old chess champion, debate champion with more speaking trophies than I have, and a 7-year-old who loves baseball, those conversations are all over the place. And that's great. Parents are strong. Parents are educated. Parents are, they don't agree with everything that I agree with, but I would say pretty close. But they're instilling family values and traditions and good habits Get up from the table, the first thing you do, go brush your teeth, get ready for bed. That doesn't mean you're going to bed right now, but everything that's necessary before you go to bed should be done now. Why? Teaching discipline and regimen and habits. Trust me, when you get ready to employ these young men, they will be people you can trust to show up to work on time, do the things they're supposed to do, follow the checklist. That's a good thing. But see, that starts around the dining room table, around dinner, around lunches, around breakfast together, when there's time and space for conversation, and there's no digital devices at the table. She scolds me because my phone will go off, and I'm like, I've got clients that are waiting on me. Put it in the other room. Put it on Do Not Disturb. Got it. Your house, your rules. I'm cool with that. See, if we don't set those parameters already, if we don't reclaim the dinner table, not just DoorDash and fast food, which is the habit of many, but how do we make that table a place for conversation again? And what are the stories that are told at that table? Number two, learn to look at modern media with discernment glasses. You're going to have to look at the things that are coming in, whether it's feigned relationships. Ooh, I'm really interested in you, just enough to make you a victim. They're phishing attacks. They could be after all kinds of financial instruments, but they may just be after the livelihood or the life of your children. 764? Yeah. Do your research. If you're not looking at media and social media, even the video games that they're playing, if you're not looking through a lens of discernment every time you watch those, every time you give your children access to them, or let me flip that, give them access to your child. Take a second look at that. And finally, I want you to practice some frameworks of communication. These stories that I keep talking about, Story Power Method will teach you how to find and craft and deliver those stories in a way that is and sounds very conversational. It's just normal conversation. It doesn't sound like a lecture. It doesn't have to. It's just a real event that happened that you learned a lesson that they can get a hold of. And when you can master that at the dining room table, you can master that at the ball field, you can master that on the drive to whatever amusement park you're going to. You begin to reclaim the minds and the hearts of your children. And if we don't do that soon, we're going to see children who say the darndest things running for office, like we have right now in Texas. JT is not Justin Timberlake, but he's getting almost as much attention. You should listen to the things that he says and ask yourself, really? Is that true? Do you really believe that? We've just launched a program called Narrative Warrior. Narrative Warrior is an 18-week course. And if you jump in on the very first class, which is just underway, if you jump in now, I'll encourage you to go through it twice. Go through the inaugural class, go through it again in January. Pay one time, go through all 18 weeks twice. Because I believe this has the power to shift our culture, to recenter our families, to bring us back from what I believe is the brink. And at minimum, to empower you to have a strong family that is faithful to your core values, that has influence in the marketplace without abandoning the responsibilities at home. If that's something that interests you, I challenge you to check out Narrative Warrior. I'll put a link down below. Don't let someone else's chatter step into your home and disrupt what you believe. Don't let somebody else's chatter or lies or misrepresentations steal the hearts and minds of your children. Don't let somebody else's chatter steal your nation. Right now, they're on target, and they're doing a pretty good job of it. I'm J. Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV and Story Power Academy. Have a blessed day.
Hey, real quick here, I want to remind you of the Kingdom Cohort. If you're not already involved in the Kingdom Cohort, get signed up now. You're going to go through 6 weeks of Story Power training to learn how to master your stories. You're going to go through 6 weeks of Attitude Hack training, which will teach you how, whether it's corporate environment, in your church, or in your family, to build leadership, brand, and culture. Then you're going to go through Lead the Narrative to help you identify the false ideas that are out there that are damaging our society, our brand, and our culture, not only to identify them, but also to counter them. If that sounds like a great challenge for you, I want you to jump in to the Narrative Warrior Kingdom Cohort. Do it now.
Subscribe now for access to our extensive media library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom. Begin your personal growth plan at storypoweracademy.com for leadership development and communication skills training.